Today I'm in Lenabo Forest. 107 years ago this was referred to as Royal Naval Air Station Longside, and although you know it's covered in trees now, there weren't any trees here, and this was a thriving military base. It was a 1,500 people base. It had a church, it had a swimming pool, it had a theatre, it had gas making plants, and most importantly it had 3 gigantic sheds where airships were kept, because this was a base for the coastal protection airships. Up ahead of me is the remains of the sheds. Now there were 3 sheds. They were all 100 foot high. 2 of them were 300 foot long and 150 foot wide, and the big daddy in the middle was 700 foot long and 150 foot wide. Now I'll show you an aerial photograph of what it's like now, and now I'll show you a photograph of what it looked like back in the day. There you go. Now this was the early days of aerial bombardment, and these were the shock and awe weapon of the time. These things could fly long distance and drop bombs, and they were prowling up and down the coast here, because we're just a couple of miles from the sea, hunting for U-boats, protecting the civil boats, the fishing boats, and the what they call them, transport boats, and also protecting the naval boats that were going up and down. So what's left in this forest are a few of the concrete blocks that held up the big windproof fences that were around the side of the sheds, and also the big concrete pads where the actual hangars sheds were. In amongst this bit of forest over here, he says, oh no, let's turn that round. In amongst this forest here is the remains of the gas making plant, and further across are the remains of the billets. Now up ahead of me here, which is one of the concrete pads of the smaller sheds. This was a 300 foot by 150 foot shed. And now all we've got really is a clearing. Now it's an active forest now, and there's currently a phase of removing trees, partly because of storm damage and partly because it was due for cutting. So ahead of me there's a lot of tree felling activity, but for me that's good, because what it's actually starting to do is it's uncovering some of the hidden features of the airbase. Now this here was part of that shed, and this was one of the 300 foot by 150 foot sheds, and in the middle, I don't quite know what that was, but that looks like that goes underground. Then over that way is where the big shed was, and over that way is where another one of these 300 foot sheds were, and that's where I'm thinking about going to put up my tarp. So we'll have a walk around the path and we'll see what we come across. So what I've got behind me now is the concrete blocks with the wrought iron girders sticking out of them, and this is where the windproof fence was put alongside, and it was a massive big steel and concrete fence that went up 50 feet, and it protected the airships as they came out from side winds. The northeast of Scotland's pretty bad for windy conditions, and airships are not they're not great in strong winds. Now this camp, it used both the blimp type balloons, which are literally just a balloon with a basket hung underneath. I'll put a picture up, there you go, and also the dirigibles, which had a rigid structure inside them. Now both of the types of balloons used hydrogen as their gas, and that, as you know from the Hindenburg disaster, had, you know, some fairly serious limitations. Now the hydrogen, or sorry, the helium was produced on site at a gasworks further along, and the balloons themselves were transported here, deflated on a rail system. And actually ahead of me over there, I'll turn around, that there was the railway line. In fact, I'm actually walking along the bed of the railway line that went off to the nearest village and linked up with the northern rail system, which is how all the stuff was brought into the camp. So it had its own railway lines. The deflatable blimp type balloons were brought here on the train, and they started off here by setting up this place. And it was built in 1915. It took nearly a year to build, and it was built really solidly, which was unusual for the time. They tended to build these camps as temporary structures, but this camp was built with concrete and steel. It was pretty much built to last, and the camp operated from 1916 through the First World War, and it was decommissioned in 1920 when most of the buildings were knocked down. But as you saw there are still remains of it hidden in amongst the forest. Now, once they'd established the base, they flew in some of the bigger rigid airships, and they were used for long range bombing missions. You know, that was the shock and awe weapon of the First World War, and these things potentially could go and bomb Berlin. And this is what was used to provide air support on some of the battles in Europe. But they were a strategic weapon. They put the fear of God into the Kaiser that he could actually get bombed in his bed. And a couple of those big airships were stored in the big 700-foot shed in the middle. Now, today it is a commercial forest. As you can see, it's been cut in places, and it is very popular with dog walkers. It's one of my favourite places to bring Otis the hound, and probably not the best place to do a stealth camp, because, well, the chances of getting disturbed here are great, and I have chosen to do this on a weekend, which again isn't what I normally do, but the weather has been, well, pretty poor. We had Storm Babette, closely followed by Storm Kieran, and as you can hear by the squelching, the ground is pretty saturated with water. And here on the east coast of Scotland, we're not known to get a huge amount of rain, but we've had a huge amount of rain recently. So I'm here on a Saturday because I think it's about the only day that it's going to be clear, and even then the forecast is a bit wet for, oh God, I'm walking through a bog, for overnight. But I bought my big tarp and I bought my winter setup to try it out more than anything else, because this winter I am planning on doing most of my wild camping with the hammock, because I think, might be wrong, but I think it's going to keep me warmer than lying on the ground. Also, most of my winter wild camping this year is going to be done within 10 miles of home. I've decided I'm not going up on the high hills over winter. I've done that, been there, got the frostbite, and I've decided to, well, set myself a challenge to do wild camping within 10 miles of home and find out what was right on my doorstep. Hang on, I'm about to walk through. Yeah, that's getting deeper. So because of that, I've actually found places that have been under my nose for years and I didn't know about. So yeah, my challenge for the winter, 10 miles from home, and this is, well, this is like 3 miles from home, so this is very close. Now we're coming up now to some more buildings that were hidden in the trees. In fact, I didn't even know these were here, and they're hidden away, and now they've started felling all these trees. They started to emerge out of the forest. which is pretty cool. Well, if you're a history nerd like me, it's pretty cool. So this is ahead of me is the kind of entrance to where the big 700-foot shed was, and actually the route I'm walking along is an area that I believe was where the collapsible fence was, and they had a fence here to stop the livestock coming in, but they had to drop the fence when they were launching the big airships because they didn't do a vertical takeoff when they were fully loaded. They would kind of take off like an airplane. They would kind of need a bit of distance to gently gain height. So the fence would be dropped and they would fly off. Now these big concrete blocks here, I believe, are part of the windproof walls. Although maybe they're not. It's hard to tell. But anyway, I'll put a map up on the screen and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But I think I might find a crossing over this burn and get up over there and have a look. I think I went about that the hard way. I just went down on my arse there. But I've come in round the back and now I'm in amongst some remains of the camp concrete blocks and a raised bit over there and some nice straight looking trees. And I think I'm going to see if I can walk across this clear fell area and pitch over there. And fingers crossed we don't get any logging work done on a Sunday morning, because that might pose me a problem. But I'm going to walk across there and see if I can find somewhere to camp, because I've only got, believe it or not, about 2 hours light left. So I suppose I better pull my finger out and get on with it. I think I might have found it. Right at the edge of the clear fell, right by that concrete structure, little bit of cover, just below the dip out of sight of the path, but a nice open bit of clear sky, so if we do get the stars out, I might even get some pictures of them tonight. So I'm gonna ditch my bag, and I think I'll set up my gear, but I'll set it up in a way so I won't put the tarp up first because it's not going to rain, so you can see my winter setup. So that's what I'll do, is I'll set the cameras up and I'll come back to you when I start setting up my winter setup. That's me, got everything kind of set up. Took a bit more fiddling than I was expecting, but it's the first time I've used the bigger tarp, and yeah, it's quite a bit bigger. It's a Lenabo 4.5 metre by 3 metre tarp. It's my winter setup, so I've got a square tarp set up, so if the weather gets really heavy, it's keeping me fully covered, as opposed to my normal diamond setup, which is very good and gives you a great view out of the tarp, but if the weather's a bit wild, it doesn't give you a little much in the way of side protection. Slight problem about where I'm camping is this is a concrete pad with a bit of moss, and these trees weirdly are growing just in the gaps on the concrete pad, but the tent pegs, they don't go in so well, so I've had to improvise and use a log and, you know, a big rock and things like that, so it's not as pegged out as I would have liked. But hey, them's the breaks. That's, you have to work with what you've got. So I'll turn the camera around and I'll let you see where we are. There we go. And yes, I found some nice camp furniture, some nice slices of log to keep everything nice and flat on. So later on tonight I shall have a bit of a fire in my firebox, and I've got some nice fat wood there that'll burn nicely in it. For my tea, I'm using my Jetboil clone, my fire maple, 1 litre fire maple, and what we're actually making tonight is my homemade boil in the bag, and this is, I don't know if you can read that, Madras curry, October 23, and some breads. Okay, that's me sitting down. So after last week's terrible boil in the bag, kind of dehydrated meals, I'd kind of had enough. And well, I spoke to Mrs. P and she said, yeah, we can do that. So we bought some foil, kind of snap seal and heat sealable boil in the bag mylar foil bags, and homemade curry was put into it, and then it was put in the freezer. I've heat sealed the top, but that's purely to stop it bursting open in my bag. And in the other bag I've some homemade naan breads as well, and what I will do is I will boil them in my 1 litre Jetboil in some boiling water until they're heated through, and I'll have nice good homemade curry. I've got a can of cider to go with it as well, so proper good nosh tonight for a change, because I'm fed up of eating that rubbish food. Now, yeah, this hasn't got any preservatives in it, so it wouldn't last very long. But from the freezer, I pop it in the fridge the night before I'm coming out on a camp. It's thawed out by the day I'm going away, and it leaves me with a really good meal. It's great for a one-night camp. You could do all day breakfast with it. There's a lot of things you could do with it. Yeah, it wouldn't last for a couple of days, but I don't tend to go on a couple of day camps. And if I was, I'd probably have that for my first night, and on my second night, I'd have a dehydrated thing. Probably spicy noodles now. So that's how we're going to get on tonight for dinner. So I've got, I don't know, maybe half an hour's worth of light left. It's going down rapidly. It's also clouding over, which is a bit of a bugger, because I was hoping we were going to get some stars out. But as soon as it starts to go dark, I'm going to get some dinner on, and I'll bring you back when I've got my dinner on. Okay, it's like 4:45 now, and it's going dark. In fact, it's pretty much dark, so dinner's on. Boil in the bag, homemade curry is in the Jetboil, which you can probably hear. I'll spin around and let you see. There we go. So Jetboil cooking away. It's getting quite misty, and the temperature is dropping rapidly. It's forecast to go down to around about 0 degrees Celsius tonight, which is, I don't know what in Fahrenheit, it's that. And that's going to be the coldest night I've been out this year so far. I'm getting old, and I'm not doing any highland winter camping anymore. I've done my time up on the mountains, and yeah, so my rule for winter camping now is I'm camping within 10 miles of home and doing the local forests. And yeah, it's great. I've discovered some quite amazing stuff. So I'm going to chill out tonight, try and keep warm, have a good curry and have a cider. So once this is cooked, I'll come back. So there we go, boil in the bag curry. And that's just fantastic now. Homemade breads to go with my curry now. I have to say at this point I'm a very lucky boy, because Mrs. P is one awesome cook. She makes a mean curry and makes her own breads. This is the way to eat wild camping. I'm not going back to that dried rubbish. So I am gonna tuck into this, and I'm gonna heartily enjoy it. I'm gonna have myself a can of, what is it, Inches cider, because, well, I'm a Worcestershire boy, and I'm going to eat this up. I'm going to set up a a time lapse to see if we can get some stars on a tree stump over there, although it's pretty cloudy already. And I've got a trail camera out on the tree over there to see if I get any visitors in the night. So I think I'm going to scoff this, drink my cider and chill out, and I'll see you in the morning. See you in the morning. Well, good morning. Well, that was a wonderful night's sleep, although it poured with rain, absolutely hammered down all night. Not forecast, meant to be a dry night, but hey, there you go. I'm glad I went with a big tarp, because I think if I'd got the diamond 3x3, it would have, I think I'd have got wet. So I'm pretty much packed up. I've left the tarp up to shelter under and get a bit of a brew on. I've been down, got my coffee, and I've had a couple of oat bars. And once I've finished this, I'm going to pack the rest of the stuff up and I'm going to yomp across that there. Yeah, clear fell. That's why I'm waiting for it to get light, because that's an ankle breaker if I've ever seen one. And get back to the van and get home. So, if you like my video, I'll put my coffee down. If you like my video, give us a thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed, click the red box down at the bottom. And until the next one, I'll say ta-ra. Ta-ra a bit.